Hello, good evening, good evening. So tonight I am going to paint a Viking ship. I've got one drawn out here. You can see it. This is my first iteration, my first drawing of it. And I don't know what prompted me to want to paint a pirate ship, a Viking ship like this, but thought it would be kind of fun. So I found a picture online, drew it myself. This was my first attempt at it. Some good, some bad. But I wanted to show these to you, just to show you kind of the process that I go through to develop my watercolor paintings and what I'm going to do. So here's my first one anyways. Like I said, some good things, some bad things. I don't know. Here's my second one. You can see it's got a little bit more detail. It's got a little bit more curvature in the sail and whatnot. My horizon line on this one is actually level. And from here, I went to a third one. I drew it on my Strathmore 400 watercolor paper and printed out a test of this, and this is what it came out like. I'm fairly happy with it the way it is, and so I thought I would go ahead and paint it and make a video out of it. Here's what I came up with for my final drawing, and I've drawn it on, again, Strathmore 400 series watercolor paper. I'm going to be using my studio paints tonight. I'm going to leave those off to the side. I will be letting you know which paints I'm using at what times, and when I can, I will keep them in camera. But well, without further ado, let's just jump in. So I'm going to grab a large brush. This is a Princeton Neptune mop brush right here. And if you need to cover a lot of area, this brush is absolutely fantastic. It holds water like you would not believe. And you can just lay down some color just to get a wash on there, just as easily as that. This brush really does hold quite a lot of water. I should say before I get too far into it, I have taped my painting down. I do know that it's going to get quite wet with painting the entire sky, and my board is just got a it's just masonite with a little I don't know, 1x2 or something on the end of it there. Just something to tilt it just ever so slightly to let the water run down towards the bottom of the painting. Let's see, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to kind of go over a lot of these lines and everything. Right down almost to our horizon. I'm going to leave these big splotches of color up there. I'm not going to put in any clouds per se. So these big dark patches are in essence going to be my interest in those clouds. I'm just going to get a nice thirsty brush there. Bring that down. I'm almost done with my sky. I don't want to cover up too much of the boat here. If I get a little bit, that's probably fine. There we go. Just like that. And again, I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to dab it off. I'm going to get most of the water out of it. Just come back right on the top of this. Take all of that water that's going to lay there just off. We want that to blend right down. That'll help it just blend down to nothing. Okay, I'm going to set this up here, and while I'm giving that just a second to dry, I'm going to mix some color for our distant hills back here. I'm going to use a little Payne's Gray. I don't use Payne's Gray too much. I will sneak it in every now and again, but not too much, with a little sap green. and a little bit of ultramarine. And that is going to be my distant hill color. There we go. Just a nice bluey green there. A little bit of Payne's gray in here to dull it down. There we go. I'm going to bring my painting back into camera and I'm looking to see if it's dry. It's a pretty damp night here tonight. I got a couple of spots here that might be a little bit wet still. I'm going to rinse my brush. Probably by the time I'm done rinsing my brush and reloading it with paint, I'll be able to come back in and put some hills in there. There we go. Right up to the boat, right down to the horizon line. And these hills are supposed to be pretty far away. We won't be seeing any real detail in them, so we're not going to bother putting any real detail in them. Just going around these shields, a little bit on the boat. I don't think that's going to matter a lot, but I'm going to blot that out just a bit anyways. Around that guy's head. There we go, just quickly laying in the distant hills back there. And right down to the horizon line on either side of the boat. This one's still just a bit damp. It started to run just ever so slightly. I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. A lot of people, when they look at your watercolors, they want them to be looser. They want some of that flowiness to come out of there. So if you can, work that into your painting. Sometimes, if you're like me, it's hard to get that in there. It's hard to loosen up. Been working on it quite a lot. I'll get there someday. But for right now, I'm not quite there. Okay, so now I've got my distant hills in there. I've got my Viking ship. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to mix up. I'm going to step down one brush size. I'm going to mix up some. What am I going with here? Burnt umber and a little burnt sienna. I'm going to make that nice and watery. There we go. I want to start adding a little bit of color to my sail here, but I don't want it to get too dark quite yet. I'm imagining this is a nice canvas sail, so I want to give it a little bit of color, a nice, base color of what I think that canvas might be. There might be a little bit of ochre in there too. Let me put just a bit of that. There we go. Go light on the ochre if you're using it. It's not transparent. At least my set isn't. I know many sets are not. It's fairly opaque. So if that's a big thing for you, you want to go a little bit lighter on that. Okay, good. I've got my sail in there. I'm going to come down and paint my boat, and as you see down here at the bottom, I haven't drawn this line in. Let's see, there we go. And the reason is that I'm going to use this as my wave shape. Oh my gosh, if you heard that, it sounds like an avocado just fell off the tree onto the top of the garage. Let's see. I'm going to mix a little bit of phthalo green here. Let's do this. I'm going to start to put in some water here. A little phthalo green and a little cobalt green. I'm just making a little bit here. And I'm going to mix this with my phthalo blue, just like that. And I'm going to use that as some of my water. I want to mostly, at the moment, come in and define my wave shape. I can continue to build this wave out. Something like that. Let's see, there we go. That wave comes up like that. I'm going to let it be like that for just a second. We're going to come back to that. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not. I can't let that be. I'm going to keep the same color, but a lot less intense. I'm going to paint my water all the way back there. I'm going to make it a little bit grayer back there too. Just kind of gray it down to match the hills that are back there. There we go. And that's just a Payne's gray mixture and a little bit of ultramarine. There we go, all the way back. This one might be a little bit too dense, but we're not going to worry about it. We're worried about this big wave shape right there mostly. The rest of this, for the time being, we can just fill in. Just block in some color there. There we go. And we're going to get the rest of this a little bit more intense as things go on. We're going to be putting in a couple of other layers of this, at least of the water, so that'll when we make this more intense down here, that's gonna pull it forward, and it's going to look like it's much more in the front here. So, alright, so I've got my wave on there right now. I think what I'm going to do, switch to a smaller brush yet again, and while I'm waiting for this to dry a little bit, I'm going to come back and I'm going to put in, still with my basic sail color. Alright, hello, welcome back. I am not sure where I lost you at, and I am totally sorry. My camera died on me, and I didn't make a noise as it was going down. I'm not sure exactly where I lost any of you at, but you're all back now, and we're going to start going from here. So, I'm going to paint the body of my ship now, and I'm mixing up some basically transparent orange oxide and a little bit of burnt umber. I think that makes a nice decent wood color, and I'm just going to lay that on. We're going to start with just a plain wash in there, and I've gone back to a bigger brush just for expediency's sake. I know that I can cover so much more ground with this big brush than I can with a smaller brush, and I don't want this video to drag on for, well, I could go on for hours, but I think you guys will stop watching somewhere after the half-an-hour mark, so I'm going to try to limit my time as much as I can. There we go. Just going to bring that right over there. If I go over that water, if you're trying this at home and you go over that water just ever so slightly, don't worry about it. The good thing about that is that you see through water sometimes, and you see through little bits of water, and we're going to be putting highlights and lowlights on there anyway, so We are not going to sweat it. Okay, I'm going to take some of this ship color, come back up here and just, again, dab in some where I think there might be a shadow up here. Let's see. Something like this. Got some lines there, and I know this is filled in. Alright, I don't want to overdo this. I'd rather come back to this 2, 3, 4 times. Something like that, rather than do it all at once. Alright, I'm going to grab a little bit of my burnt sienna here. I'm going to put that down here in the bottom, and that's going to help to serve as a little bit of a shadow, just a change in the color of the wood maybe. I want it to look like this is maybe a little bit of the underside of that boat showing here. It's just tipped a little bit. There we go. Let me reach around here, and I want this to be darker back there. That's kind of the inside. I want that to be a little bit darker. We can just see that, make that out. Okay, I'm going to drop down and get a really small brush now. This is a number 2. Oops, and I'm going to get some sepia. That's what I'm going to do. And put that in my brown mixture. And I'm going to get a little bit of extra water off of there. Just dab in a few spots on my mast head that I know are going to be in shadow. Not in shadow, yeah, kind of in shadow. There we go. That sepia really darkens things down really quickly. Let's see, I'm gonna, you know what, I'll use this same one. I'm gonna use that same mixture, that's sepia and basically burnt sienna, burnt umber. I need to turn my painting because I need to rest my hand for this one. I've got a couple of extra drops of paint on there. And I am going to put my mast on. There we go. Just real carefully. I'm going to turn it around this way. I think I can get it a little bit better. There we go. I don't want to do too much more with that mast. What can we do now? Let's play with our water. I'm going to go back to my watercolor. My watercolor. And I'm going to start putting in some bold lines here. Really bold lines for our wave. There we go. I'm just going to crash in here a little bit. It's getting ready to break. Just enough to lift our ship right up out of the water there. Alright, I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue in that mixture. And I'm going to come just in front of our boat here. Drop a little bit of that, and I want to blend that out. I just want to pull that right out. Zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I'll put a little bit more in here so you can see it. But that's going to end up being a shadow in the water from our boat. There it is. I'm going to do the same thing in the back. So let me turn this ever so slightly. If I pick up a little bit of that green in there, I'm okay with that. There we go. Just a bit of the shadow from our boat. Again, I'm going to just blend that out. Wipe my brush, get it nice and dry, and just pull that out. I don't want to see any, too wet. I don't want to see any hard water lines from that at all. I can just, by keeping it dry, I can just go over and tap it and it will just blend right out to nothing. There we go. Now that helps to anchor our boat that little bit more. Got some nice dark lines here from our wave. I'm going to put just a few little bits of wave, just glimmer on the water in a few places back here. I'm going to use the same brush, just trying to touch it ever so lightly. There we go. Alright, now our boat is drying out, which we want, but it's not quite dry enough down here. So I think I'm going to come up to our masthead again, and I'm going to apply some more of this sepia and burnt sienna. I'm going to make a dark shadow line under here, like that. And I'm going to get an even smaller brush. This is still a Princeton brush, but smaller still. And these ones come to a nice point. I'm going to use this to draw in the mane on this masthead. It's probably not, I'm imagining this as I painted or as I was drawing it. It probably is not fur or hair or anything like that. It's been carved right into that wood. So I've got a nose up there I'm going to put on. And there we go. Now I'm jumping around a lot, I realize that. I'm going to make this back here quite a bit darker, the inside of our boat back here. I want to make this nice and dark back there so you know that's inside. There it is. It's like you're looking just into it. Going to help to give us a little bit of depth on here. I'm going to, speaking of a little bit of depth, our people have gotten a little bit flat. I'm going to come in and just touch them a little bit. In fact, with them you don't need to do much. They're not going to be the focus of the painting. You'll see them and you won't pay too much attention to them. So just a little bit to add a little bit of shadow on there. I'm going to come back, I'm going to give a little bit more on my mast. Now I've got this really thin brush. Again, I apologize, I have to flip this upside down. Just on the back side of that. There we go. I got off just a little bit. Maybe I can get just a little bit of that back off. I got some of it. I don't know that I want to push it too far. You can blend a little bit out. There we go. I think I'm going to stick with that. I don't want to mess with that bit of the mast anymore. Because if I do, I fear that I am going to end up doing more harm than good, and I'll either mess up the sky behind it, or I will somehow lighten it too much, and then I'll have to go back and redarken it, and none of that seems ideal to me. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to put in a few lines on our sail. Yes, I apologize, I am turning it again. I just want to give the indication of some roundness to this, and I think a few extra lines here will really help. And I'm going to just touch it with a little bit of shadow color in a couple of places. That might be a bit strong there, but I can just go back over it with just a touch of water. It will really help it out. And I've noticed that right along the bottom edge of our sail, it's gotten a little bit light. That's definitely going to be curled under. We definitely want to make that dark and shadowy. There we go. Just scratching on, basically dry. I'm more just rubbing the paint that's there more than anything. Okay, now I'm kind of waiting for my boat to dry up a little bit, because I want to be able to come back and put a little bit extra on here. That might be too thick. I might not have waited quite long enough either. We're going to find out right here. I think we're going to be fine. There we go. Just getting all the way down to the edge there. Same thing back here. Getting rid of any... Boy, I'm not doing good all of a sudden. Getting rid of any dark lines that might be here. I'm sorry, white lines that might be here. Alright, I'm going to get a rigger brush. I'm going to take my dark color with my sepia. I'm going to come right along the top of this. That's going to give me a nice top line. Alright, I'm just trying to mix up a bit of a darker brown here. I like the way this is looking, but I want it to stand out just a bit more. And of course that's too dark. go. Just a little bit of maybe the keel or something that's down there. Right on this side, give just indication of, there we go, of the back line. A little bit of depth to the back here. That's all we're doing. I think what we have to do now is take a break. Alright, one thing I do need to do, we're going to give a little bit of depth to this painting. Is we need to paint a little bit of shadow on all of our shields here, both on the center, the knob on the center, and where we see it come down on the boat. It really is not much, but it really will make a difference in your final painting. Alright, and then I am going to cheat just a bit. I am going to draw on some lines with my brown pen. My pen has brown ink in it. Just going to draw a couple of lines in here. Just to give us the indication of some curvature on there. And the same thing on our boat. Just going to scratch in just real gently. Some lines to indicate the boards that were used to make this boat. I think it's just a little bit damp here and here. I can't seem to get the lines to come on. Yeah. Just a bit of wetness on there. Sent my pen into a tailspin. Okay, the last thing we need to do, I guess, is finish our waves. I want to darken this whole area right up in front. Let's see, I got that color and that color. If we do it quickly, we won't lose any of our wave from underneath. Just real quickly, some swipes like that. That one I don't really like. Better. Just pull it out, that's better. Alright, I'm going to get this. And this. And this. And we're going to draw in Don't be afraid. You really gotta push this down. To get what you want, which is a little bit of white water just on the front of that. And just where it hits the boat. And there you go. That's the pirate ship. No, that's not. Alright, good.